Well, hello there. Here we are for Chapter 19, Section 5. We're going to wrap up climate change today. What we're going to talk about is adapting to climate change, because in a real sense, it's already here. It's projected to get worse depending on how we act, but part of our plan has got to be adapting to it. We can't stick our heads in the sand. We can't say it doesn't exist. We can't say it's going to be so far off, there's nothing we can do about it. We want to do some of what we talked about before, plan to mitigate it, but we need to adapt as well. Now, one of the things we really want people to realize is that there is a lot of important economic, ecological, and health benefits to drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, right? Just like the cartoon. What if we do that? What if it's a hoax and we do this all for a better world for nothing? It's a win-win, right? We go to greener energy, we have surplus of energy, we cut down on our greenhouse gas emissions, we cut down on the soot and the smog and the mercury. You know, this is good for everybody. But anyway, the goal is to slow the projected climate change. We want to cut our carbon emissions and things down enough that we can slow it. The slower change happens, the more time organisms, animals, everything has to adapt to the ongoing changes. If we are going to have spring early in Gainesville, it happens at Valentine's Day now. That's when the buds start to pop out. That's when the pollen starts coming. It used to be early March. If it's going to be earlier, the slower it occurs, it allows things to adapt with less harsh change. Now, other things that we needed to do when it comes to preparing for it. Once again, we want to do everything we can to slow it. We want to pull away from coal, fossil fuels, more of this. But no matter what, there are some things we have to do to prepare. When the change is coming, when the change is inevitable, which it is, we want to make sure we're ready for it as much as we possibly can be. Now, what do we want to do in preparing for it? We need to cut our greenhouse emissions by about 45% of their current use right now by 2030. So within a decade, we're doing that. We are cutting down on what it is. We've just got to up the ante. We need to eliminate them by 2050. And that's a tall order because we're talking about the whole planet, not just the United States. This is part of the problem with climate change. We all have to come on board because no matter where the greenhouse gas emissions are being released, they circle the planet. Another thing that we've got to do is we've got to build some flood control barriers, like the picture back here. This one is in London, it's on the Thames, and this is a mobile flood barrier unit. So as they get storm surges or it comes up, they can use this to raise up and block the floods coming in through the river. We've got to have areas where we're prepared for more flooding, especially as low-lying and coastal areas. We need to build away from the coastlines. We've been building our hotels and everything is right up against the coastline, even houses. We need to build back. There are areas that did this, all the hotels are on the other side of the road from the beach, but everybody needs to start taking that tack, and we need to build at higher elevations just so that we're prepared. We know the sea levels are going to come in some, let's prepare for it. Some of the houses that are currently there, especially if they own the property and they're going to be rebuilt, they've got to be put up on stilts, once again, just to deal with the incoming water. We need to plan for environmental refugees. We've already seen environmental refugees. Those numbers are going to increase. We want to take measures against storm surges at the coast in areas where mangroves grow, helping to plant and put in mangrove forests. Mangrove forests do a lot to control the surge coming up into an area. But we have to prepare for these higher waters, and that means the storms are all going to be worse as they come in. When it starts getting higher, we're going to see more erosion. We've got to plan for it. We've got to prepare for more intense wildfires. As the climate changes and some areas are getting less rain than they used to, it gets drier and the wildfires are going to come out. We've got to make sure that we have firefighters ready, that we have, whether it's the equipment needed, helicopters to drop water and chemicals on to help put it out. But we've got to prepare for more intense wildfires and be prepared to protect people that live in the areas where they're going to occur. We've got to conserve water. Fresh water is life. There's a lot of it on the planet, but it's not equally distributed. As we get less snowfall in areas, therefore less snowmelt, as glaciers retreat and we don't get as much seasonal water loss from it, people that have lived in the areas where they used to have water are not going to have as much. We've got to begin storing it. We've got to begin conserving it, because we can't keep using it at the same rate we are. Obviously, it'd be great to help bring down population growth. The more and more people need more and more resources, the fewer people we have on the planet, the easier it is to deal with the changes. The graphic back here is just trying to illustrate some of these things. Some of our wildlife refuges, we need to push them a little farther north as it warms up. Things are going to naturally migrate anyway. Migration patterns are going to change. We need to open up more wildlife refuges up in the north. And this idea of connecting corridors, we have here connected corridors, so they have an area, a pathway to get to the new refuges, if you will. We need to reduce our water works. Once again, let's go to better irrigation plans as we are. And we need to make sure that crops that use an awful lot of water are planted in areas that are going to get the water, where it tends to rain more. We've got to shift from trying to grow crops in very dry areas by irrigating to get to it. Once again, moving people in, putting houses up on the stilts, realizing that the coastlines are going to move in. These are just some of the things that we have got to do just in preparation. Now, in this chapter, sort of wrapping things up, we want to go back and look at these big ideas, right? There is considerable scientific evidence that indicates the Earth's atmosphere is warming, and it's warming from the ground up, not the top down, signifying it is primarily because of human activity, not greater solar activity, it's the greenhouse gases. This is likely to lead to significant climate change during this century. We're seeing some of it now. It is more than likely just going to escalate as the century moves on, and it's going to have some severe and long-lasting consequences that we're all going to have to live with and work through. Emergency action is actually needed to reduce the harmful effects of rapid climate change. We've got to increase our energy efficiency. 83% of what things are lost. 41% is due to the laws of thermodynamics, but 43% is recoverable. We've got to increase our energy efficiency as much as possible. Once again, this cuts down on any kind of greenhouse gases being emitted. With the more, 43%, that's 43% less coal to burn, less natural gas to burn that we need from renewables. We've got to get our energy efficiency as high as possible. We have got to sharply reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We've got to try and pull them back to as near zero as possible with renewable and clean energy sources. And that's the thing, we've got to rely more on these clean energy sources as we move forward. We have the technology to do so, we have the know-how, and we're getting better and better with our technology. It's just the direction we've got to go. Now, we can prepare for some climate change that, once again, is now inevitable. We need to realize these important ecological effects of drastically reducing it, but ultimately, the goal is to slow the climate change so that we can better adapt to it as things change and move along. Guys, that wraps it up for this chapter, looking at climate change. Take care, and we'll see you next time.